Welcome to Americana Archives. Today's story comes from the great state of Oregon, being reported in the Coast Mail of November 22nd, 1879. Today's headline is Young Men Strike Out. It says, if the able-bodied young men who congregate in our large cities, instead of standing about corner groceries, cursing capitalists and the government for not supplying them with work and higher wages than the trade and the times will justify, will strike out for the mines or the unsettled parts of the country, they would do the public a real service, and in a few years, by industry and economy, find themselves in independent circumstances. There are in California, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington Territory, and Arizona, 351,608,100 acres of public lands, of which only about 96 million have been surveyed. It is safe to estimate that over 100 million acres of this unsurveyed land is capable of cultivation, and at least one half of the remainder would graze sheep and wool-bearing goats. It is said by men who are posted that there are nearly 40 million acres in California of the best grapeland in the world, that nearly all the hill and mountainsides, extending from far up the Sierras down to the seashore, most of it now covered with brush and chaparral, and considered almost worthless, will, if cleared and cultivated, produce the table, raisin, and wine grape to perfection. There are thousands of acres within sight of San Francisco Bay that can be bought for from $5 to $10 per acre or less, 25 acres of which cleared and cultivated in the right kind of grapes would in 4 years make their owner independent. Of all the industries in this state, we don't believe that anything is more promising in the future than the cultivation of the grape. With 1,500 miles of seacoast commanding the best fisheries in the world, with mountains of mineral wealth within a day's travel of San Francisco, and extending all the way from Mexico on the south to Alaska on the north, and comprising gold, silver, lead, copper, quicksilver, platinum, iron, coal, etc., all free to the first locator, and waiting for the industrious prospector to develop them. With the finest forests of timber in the world, and a climate that cannot be surpassed anywhere, with millions of acres of as fine grain land as can be furnished anywhere, and all within easy reach of the North Pacific Railroad, now rapidly approaching completion, and other means of communication, and ready for occupation. With all these immense and available resources near at hand, the single man in good health, who will stand around the street corners and curse the government or anybody else for not supplying him with work or with the means to live, ought to be taken up by the nearest poundmaster and treated like a worthless dog. Parents should encourage their sons to leave the cities as early as possible and strike out for themselves. We venture to say that there are few healthy growlers in San Francisco or other cities on the coast who cannot, by saving the money they spend for whiskey and living economically, get together enough to take them to some place where they could get all the government land they could work. Instead of getting up strikes and indignation meetings against capitalists or to abuse the government, get up indignation meetings against the drones and force them to strike out. When the bees get too thick in a hive for comfort, they drive out the youngest family and make them seek a home for themselves. Let us act on the same principle and encourage our young men to go out and avail themselves of the grand privileges that government has extended to them. Keep them at home long enough to read, write, and cipher, with sufficient knowledge of geography to find their way out in the country. Learn them sober, economical, and industrious habits. Teach them to let politics alone, and to knock down the first candidate for office who offers to treat them to a drink of liquor in order to buy their votes, for that is just what it means, and at an early age make them leave the cities and strike out for themselves. Young man, strike out. This article was originally reported in the Petaluma Courier of October 30th. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.